The digestive system. What is it? The digestive system is a series of pathways, organs, ducts, and valves that individually perform one function but collectively operate to move food in, through, and out of your body. Simultaneously, the nutrients in the food are also being extracted and stored for later use. The biggest role that the digestive system performs is to keep the body in homeostasis by ingesting food, separating it into chemical nutrients, and eliminating the indigestible remains. Now that we've covered what it is and why it's important, now let's get into how it works. The digestion of food takes place within a tube called the digestive tract, which begins with the mouth and ends with the anus. It's also important to know that there are two types of digestion, mechanical and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion begins in the mouth. In the mouth, the three important actors include the teeth, salivary glands, and tongue. In the mouth, the teeth grinds up the food into smaller pieces. The salivary glands secrete the enzyme salivary amylase. The purpose of salivary amylase is to break down starch into maltose. While the food is being chewed, the saliva and the food mix so that when ready, the tongue will move the food down through the pharynx and the esophagus in the form of a bolus. Even though the main function of the esophagus is to pass food from the mouth into the stomach, there are components on the esophagus, such as the epiglottis, that prevent food from entering the windpipe. This is of course so that you don't choke. The bolus goes down the esophagus by wave-like muscle contractions called peristalsis. From the esophagus, the food comes into the stomach via the cardiac valve, a muscle that contracts and relaxes to allow food to enter the stomach or leave it. Once the bolus has reached the stomach, it is stored and thus starts the digestion process of proteins. The stomach has both a mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. With the presence of protein inside of the stomach, the hormone gastrin is released. Once it is, hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen are released. Together they form pepsin, which is the enzyme that breaks down proteins into shorter amino acids. When leaving the stomach through the pyloric valve, the bolus has now become what is known as chyme. Chyme is what is left over of the bolus that is mechanically digested in the stomach. Chyme flows into the small intestine so that it can be broken down by other enzymes. From the stomach, peristalsis carries the chyme into the small intestine, or rather the duodenum. Since the chyme is acidic, the pancreas releases sodium bicarbonate, which neutralizes the acid in the chyme. It is here in the duodenum that the process of food digestion ends. In the rest of the small intestine, the jejunum and the ileum, the nutrients from the food are absorbed. Along the walls of the small intestine, we see folds, and on these folds there are villi, and on these villi there are epithelial cells that have microvilli. Together, these things give the small intestine enough surface area to cover a tennis court. The villi absorb nutrients and pass them along to their respective places. Amino acids, nucleic acids, and glucose would all go into the blood capillary. Fats, lipids, and monoglycerides would enter the lymphatic capillary. While some may think they are, the following organs are not actually a part of the digestive tract, rather they're accessories. They help in the functioning of the digestive system, but do no digesting themselves. The liver has 8 specific functions in which it performs. The first of them would be to detoxify blood by metabolizing poisonous substances. The second will be to store iron and vitamins A, D, E, K, and B12. The third of its functions would be to make plasma proteins, such as albumins and fibrinogen. These are all made from amino acids. The fourth of its functions would be to store excess glucose from after a meal as glycogen. It also breaks down that glycogen into glucose when the glucose concentration of the blood in the body is low. The fifth of its functions would be to produce urea after the breakdown of amino acids. The sixth would be to remove bilirubin, a breakdown of hemoglobin, from the blood and excrete it in bile, a product of the liver. The seventh would be to help regulate blood cholesterol levels. And the eighth, which is the most important, would be to produce bile. The pancreas serves 2 functions, an endocrine and an exocrine function. In the exocrine function, the pancreatic juice is secreted. Pancreatic juice contains sodium bicarbonate, which helps neutralize stomach acid. When performing its endocrine function, hormones are secreted. These hormones include insulin and glucagon. The gallbladder is a pear-shaped sac that is attached to the surface of the liver. Its purpose is to store up excess bile created by the liver. Water is also reabsorbed by the gallbladder so that bile becomes a thick mucus-like material. When needed, bile leaves the gallbladder and proceeds to the duodenum through the bile duct. In the digestive tract, there are various enzymes at work that make digestion possible. These are some of the major ones: salivary amylase, pancreatic amylase, maltase, pepsin, trypsin, peptidase, nucleosidase, and lipase. Referring back to the hormones mentioned earlier, the function of these hormones are to trigger certain actions. Insulin is an example. The secretion of insulin is caused by an imbalance of the blood glucose level. Insulin then stimulates the usage of glucose by the body's cells, especially those of the liver. The glucose, if there is too much of it, is then stored as glycogen. If there is not enough glucose in the blood, glycogen in the body is broken down into glucose for use. The glucose is used for energy and protein metabolism, and glycerol for the formation of fat. Lastly, we have the large intestine. This is actually comprised of two parts, the rectum and the colon. The colon, which is the front end, absorbs 95% of incoming water. This is so that it can be stored or used. The colon also plays a role in the consistency of feces. It is divided into three parts: the ascending, transverse, and descending colon. It also has E. coli bacteria. The second part of the large intestine is the rectum, the rear end. This is where indigestible remains, also known as feces, is stored. The rectum contains bile pigments and E. coli. When the contents are ready to be released, they exit through the anus as a bowel movement